The call came just after sunrise, not from my brother, from his house. That alone told me something was wrong. My mother answered first. I watched her face change as she listened, color draining, hand tightening around the phone, breath catching like she'd forgotten how to use her lungs. "What do you mean he's not answering?" she whispered. I felt a cold pressure build in my chest. My brother never missed calls, never, not from his staff, not from family. He ran 2 empires at once, his production company that made hit dramas and films, and a real estate business spread across 3 cities. Discipline was his religion. My mother hung up slowly. "We're going to his house," she said. Something in her voice scared me more than panic. It was flat, controlled, the kind of calm that comes when the heart already knows the truth but the mind isn't ready to accept it. The drive felt longer than it should have. The city looked normal, people going to work, shops opening, life moving on, while mine was quietly slipping out of alignment. When we reached the gate, the guards didn't salute. They just stared. The gate was open. That never happened. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent for a place that was usually full of staff, phones ringing, assistants moving in and out. Shoes were still by the door. A cup of coffee sat cold on the table. My mother called his name. No answer. I moved toward the stairs, my pulse hammering in my ears. Each step felt heavier, like the house itself was resisting us. Then I saw the bedroom door open. I stopped. My mother walked past me, and then she screamed. Not a loud scream. Not dramatic, a sound that came from somewhere deep, ancient, broken. My brother was lying on the floor beside the bed, still, unmoving, his eyes half open, staring at nothing. His phone lay near his hand, screen cracked. I don't remember kneeling, I just remember being on the floor, my hand on his chest, begging him to breathe. He didn't. By the time the ambulance arrived, I already knew. The doctors said words like sudden and cardiac and no signs of struggle. The police nodded, wrote notes, looked around like this was just another case. Natural death, that's what they called it. But I knew my brother, he was 38. He worked out, he ate clean, he had no medical history, and most importantly, he was paranoid about his health. He'd had a full checkup just 3 weeks earlier. Something didn't fit. At the hospital, his wife arrived late, too late. She cried loudly, too loudly. She collapsed into a chair, hands over her face, her shoulders shaking. Their children clung to her, confused, silent. I watched her closely. Not once did she ask how he died. Not once did she ask if he'd said anything. Instead, she kept repeating the same sentence. "I don't know how I'll manage everything alone." Everything, not him, everything. That night, while my mother sat beside his body, refusing to let go, the business calls started. Production partners, real estate agents, lawyers, accountants, too fast. By morning, the manager of my brother's companies had taken charge. He'd always been there, quiet, efficient, loyal. My brother trusted him completely, gave him access to everything. Now he stood in the living room like he owned the place. "We need to act quickly," he said, placing files on the table. "Projects can't stop. Investors need reassurance. Documents need signatures." My brother wasn't even buried yet. My mother looked up slowly. "What documents?" The manager hesitated for half a second, then smiled. "Temporary control papers, just until things stabilize." I felt that cold pressure again. Temporary control. I picked up one file and flipped through it. Ownership transfer clauses, emergency authority, power of attorney. This wasn't temporary, this was a takeover. "I think we should wait," I said calmly. The manager looked at me for the first time. Really looked. "With respect, this is complicated business. Emotional decisions can cause losses." Losses, like my brother was already a closed chapter. His wife nodded quickly. "He's right, my husband would want the companies protected." I turned to her. "Did he tell you that?" She avoided my eyes. "Everyone knows how much he cared about his work." I cared about his work too. That's why I noticed what they missed. His laptop was gone, not stolen, not broken, gone. So was the hard drive he kept locked in his office, the one he used for unreleased projects and private records. Later that night, after guests left and the house went quiet again, I found my mother sitting alone in the study, holding one of my brother's old notebooks. "He was afraid," she said suddenly. "Of what?" I asked. "Of being betrayed," she whispered. "He told me weeks ago if anything happens to him, nothing is accidental." My heart started pounding. I went to his office, opened drawers, checked shelves, everything looked clean. Too clean, except one thing, a single script folder hidden behind books. The title page was simple, no production logo, no release date, just one line written in his handwriting. If I'm gone, start here. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside wasn't a movie script. It was a confession, names, dates, transactions, meetings disguised as creative discussions. A real estate deal that never went public. A drama project used to move money, and one name appearing again and again. The manager and one more, his wife. My breath caught. This wasn't just about money, this was planned. Slowly, carefully. I closed the folder and looked around the empty office. The place where my brother built worlds for audiences, where he told stories of betrayal on screen while living inside one off screen. That's when I made a decision. I wouldn't cry publicly, I wouldn't accuse anyone without proof. I wouldn't rush like they wanted me to, I would stay quiet. And I would destroy them the way my brother would have, using truth, timing, and their own greed. If you're listening to this story and you feel that pull, that need to know what happens next, stay with me. Subscribe, because part 2 is where the widow and the manager make their first fatal mistake, and where I realize my brother didn't just leave me clues. He left me a weapon. The funeral hadn't even happened yet and they were already dividing him. That was the first thing that burned into my memory, not the prayers, not the flowers, the way people whispered in corners, calculating. My brother's body lay in the next room, cold and silent, while his manager sat at the dining table with a laptop open, speaking softly into his phone. Yes, production will continue. Investors are calm. Yes, I have temporary authority. Temporary. That word again. My mother sat beside me, her back straight, eyes dry. She hadn't cried since that first scream. She just watched, listened. Grief hadn't broken her, it had sharpened her. After the burial, when the house finally emptied, the manager called a family meeting. My brother's wife sat at the head of the table, dressed in white, eyes red but alert. Her children were sent upstairs. This conversation wasn't for them. We need to stabilize everything, the manager said. The production company has 3 ongoing projects. Real estate has pending deals. Delays will cause losses. And my brother, I asked quietly. Where does he fit into this discussion? He paused. With respect, he's gone. My mother's fingers tightened around her cup. Gone, she repeated, so quickly. The manager cleared his throat. That's life. Life, I nodded slowly. Show us the documents. He slid them across the table. My brother's wife pushed them toward my mother. Just sign, she said softly. It's only for now. I didn't touch the papers. Instead, I asked, where is his laptop? The room shifted. The manager answered too fast. It's being serviced. For what? I asked. Routine, he said. And the hard drive? I continued. The one he kept locked. Silence. My brother's wife looked down. I don't know about those things. I leaned back, studying them. Strange, because he told me if anything ever happened to him, those would be the first things to disappear. The manager smiled thinly. You're emotional? No, I said calmly. I'm observant. That night I didn't sleep. I went through every drawer, every old box, every forgotten corner of the house. In his wardrobe, behind suits he no longer needed, I found a second phone. No password. That scared me more than if there had been one. The last message was sent 3 nights before his death. If I don't respond by morning, don't trust anyone, especially not the ones who sound calm. My stomach dropped. I backed everything up. Messages, call logs, notes, and then I saw something that made my hands shake. A scheduled email, drafted, unsent, set to auto-send the morning after his death, but it never sent. Why? Because someone had turned the phone off. The email subject line read, in case of emergency, release everything. I opened the draft. It was addressed to multiple journalists, a lawyer, and me. Inside was a detailed breakdown of how his manager had been slowly shifting assets through shell projects under the production company, using drama budgets to hide real estate commissions. And his wife? She wasn't ignorant. She was a partner. Her name appeared on offshore accounts linked to properties my brother had refused to sell. My chest tightened. This wasn't a betrayal of marriage. This was a coup. The next morning, the manager announced an emergency board meeting at the production office. He didn't invite me, so I went anyway. I walked into that glass building with my brother's access card, the one he'd insisted I keep years ago just in case. The room fell quiet when I entered. Directors stared, assistants froze. The manager forced a smile. This meeting is restricted. So was my brother's death, I replied and took a seat. I placed a single file on the table, his script folder. If I'm gone, start here. The manager's face tightened. Before you continue, I said calmly, I want to ask one question. No one spoke. Why did you cancel the forensic audit my brother requested 2 weeks before he died? Murmurs rippled through the room. The manager stood. This is inappropriate? No, I said, this is overdue. I slid copies across the table, bank movements, fake invoices, budget reallocations. Someone here has been stealing from the company, I continued. And someone helped him? The manager slammed his hand on the table. This is slander. I looked straight at him. Then you won't mind the police audit I requested this morning. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. That was when my brother's wife walked in. Late, again, her eyes met mine, sharp, assessing. You're tearing everything apart, she said softly. Is this how you honor your brother? I stood slowly. No. This is how I protect his children. Her expression cracked for just a second. The manager reached for his phone. I smiled. Already blocked. His eyes widened. Outside, sirens echoed faintly, not close, yet. I gathered my things and walked out. Because part 3 isn't about suspicion anymore. It's about proof. And the moment I unlock what my brother hid inside one unreleased drama episode, everything they built starts collapsing in public. If you're still with me, subscribe, because what comes next turns fiction into confession. The episode was never meant to air. That's what made it dangerous. 3 days after the boardroom confrontation, while everyone was distracted, lawyers arguing, investors calling, my brother's wife playing the role of the grieving widow, I went back to the production office alone. Not to fight, to listen. The security guard recognized me. He hesitated, then stepped aside. Your family, he said quietly. Yes, that was the problem they'd forgotten. I went straight to my brother's private editing room. The one only he and the post-production head had access to. The room smelled the same: coffee, dust, late nights. His chair was still pushed back like he'd just stood up. On the main computer, there was a project file labeled with a fake name. No title, no episode number, just a date. The date matched the night he'd messaged me. My heart started racing. I clicked play. At first it looked like a normal drama scene. 2 men in an office. Low lighting, serious tone. One was a businessman, the other his manager. I leaned closer. The dialogue felt too real, too specific. The manager character spoke lines that mirrored actual conversations I'd seen in emails. Words like temporary control, shell companies, paper ownership. Then the camera angle shifted, and the businessman's face came fully into view. It wasn't an actor, it was my brother. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a drama. This was a confession disguised as fiction. He looked straight into the camera and spoke calmly, like he knew exactly who would eventually watch this. If you're seeing this, he said, it means I was right not to trust them. My hands started shaking. He continued, explaining how he discovered money being moved through his production budgets into real estate projects he hadn't approved. How his manager justified it as creative accounting. How his wife told him not to fight it yet, to wait, to stay calm, to let things settle. She says patience, my brother said on screen, but patience is what thieves ask for when they're almost done stealing. The scene cut to another angle. A recorded phone call played. The manager's voice, clear, confident. We need you out of the way long enough to sign. Once it's done, everything resets. My stomach dropped. The next voice was quieter, his wife, you're overthinking, just sign. For the kids, the episode ended with my brother standing up, looking tired but resolved. If anything happens to me, he said, this footage proves intent. The screen went black. I sat there for a long time, unable to move. This wasn't just evidence. This was a dead man speaking. I copied everything, 3 backups, different drives, cloud storage, then I did something my brother would have approved of. I didn't go to the police, yet I went to his wife. She was at the house meeting with lawyers. When she saw me enter, her eyes flicked briefly toward the hallway, checking who was listening. We need to talk, I said calmly. She crossed her arms. About what? About the episode, I replied. Her face didn't change, but her breathing did. You always liked stories, she said lightly. Now isn't the time. Oh, this is exactly the time, I said, placing my phone on the table and pressing play. Her own voice filled the room. Just sign for the kids. She froze. Slowly she sat down. You don't understand, she whispered. I was protecting them. By helping steal their father's legacy, I asked. Tears filled her eyes, but I saw something else underneath. Fear. He was going to ruin everything, she said. He wouldn't stop digging. So you stopped him, I said quietly. She looked up sharply. I didn't kill him. I held her gaze. But you benefited. Silence. Then she spoke, her voice breaking. The manager said it was just stress, that he'd calm down, that we just needed control for a while. Control, that word again. You chose the wrong side, I said. And now the truth exists. Her shoulders slumped. What do you want? I stood. I want you to cooperate or this goes public. Her eyes widened. Public? Yes, I said. Not rumors, not accusations. His voice, his face. His words. She covered her mouth. Outside, her children laughed unaware. You'll destroy them, she whispered. I shook my head. No, I'll save them. That night, the manager tried to flee. Airports flagged him. His accounts froze. Because someone had finally pressed the button my brother prepared. In part 4 is where everything explodes, arrests, public exposure, and the moment the manager realizes that the drama he helped create is now playing in real life. If you've come this far, stay with me. Subscribe, because from here on there's no hiding, only consequences. The explosion didn't start with sirens. It started with silence. The kind of silence that follows when people realize they've been caught and don't yet know how bad it is. By morning, the manager's name was no longer answering calls. His office lights were off. His parking spot was empty. He hadn't made it to the airport. His passport was flagged before he reached security. I knew because his lawyer called my brother's house before noon. He's willing to cooperate, the lawyer said carefully, if certain materials remain private. I almost laughed. Private? I replied. You mean the episode my brother recorded in case he died? A pause, then. Yes, too late, I said and ended the call. By afternoon, the production company's servers were seized under a court-approved audit. Accountants poured in. Screens lit up with transactions no one wanted explained. Fake invoices. Inflated budgets. Real estate commissions hidden inside creative expenses. The same pattern over and over, and every path led back to one desk. The manager's. My brother's wife tried to hold things together. She released a statement about grief, about stability for the children, about continuing my brother's vision. But then the episode leaked. Not the whole thing, just a 3-minute clip, my brother's face, his calm voice, the words. If anything happens to me, this footage proves intent. That was all it took. The internet did the rest. Within hours, the production company was trending. Commentators called it a real-life thriller. Viewers recognized the manager's voice from the recording. Former employees started talking. Anonymous emails poured in. People always know more than they admit. They're just waiting for permission to speak. By evening, the police came, not with noise, with folders. They interviewed the staff first. Then the board, then they asked for my brother's wife. She didn't scream, she didn't faint. She sat very still. I was in the next room when they questioned her. I could hear her voice through the thin wall. I didn't steal anything, she said. I was advised. By whom? An officer asked. Silence. Minutes passed. Then she said his name, the manager. When they brought her out, she looked older, smaller. The confidence was gone. She saw me and stopped. You planned this, she said weakly. No, I replied. My brother did. I just listened. Tears spilled down her face. I never wanted him gone. I believed her. That didn't change anything. 2 days later, the manager was formally arrested. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. He asked to see me. I almost refused. Almost. When I walked into the interrogation room, he looked up with hollow eyes. You're enjoying this, he said bitterly. I shook my head. No, I'm finishing something. He laughed dryly. He always trusted you more. Yes, I said. That's why he left me the truth. His face twisted. She pushed me. She said if we didn't act, he'd destroy everything. And you listened, I replied. Because you wanted what wasn't yours. He leaned back, defeated. What happens now? I met his eyes. Now the story ends the way he wrote it. The court froze all major assets. The real estate projects halted. Properties seized pending investigation. The production company suspended releases, including the unreleased episode. For now, my brother's children were moved under temporary guardianship. My mother held them that night, rocking gently, whispering prayers. Your father loved you, she kept saying, more than anything. And I realized something important. Revenge wasn't what I was doing, protection was. But the hardest part was still ahead. Because part 5 isn't about the manager or the courts. It's about the widow's final move and the truth she reveals when she realizes she's already lost. If you're still here, stay, subscribe. Because the next part changes how you see everything that came before. She came to me at night, not with lawyers, not with confidence, with fear. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes footsteps sound like confessions. My mother was asleep, exhausted from days of court visits and hospital memories that refused to fade. The children were finally resting in the next room, unaware that their world was being rebuilt from ruins. I was sitting alone when the doorbell rang. I knew it was her before I opened it. My brother's wife stood there, eyes swollen, face pale, no makeup, no performance left. She didn't look like a widow or a villain anymore. She looked like someone who had run out of options. I need to talk, she said. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in slowly, like the walls might accuse her if she moved too fast. She didn't sit. She stood in the middle of the room, twisting her fingers. They're turning on me, she whispered. The partners, the lawyers, even the ones who promised protection. I crossed my arms. That's what happens when the truth surfaces. She swallowed hard. I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at her calmly. You helped it go this far. Her eyes filled with tears. You think I wanted him dead? I didn't answer immediately. I said slowly, you wanted control more than you wanted honesty. That broke her. She sank onto the couch, covering her face. Her shoulders shook, but this time it wasn't for show. It was the ugly kind of crying. The kind people don't do in front of cameras. He was changing, she said through tears. Your brother, he was pulling away from me, from everything. He trusted you more, he questioned everything. I felt invisible. So you chose power, I said. I chose fear, she replied. Fear of losing everything. I nodded. Fear always charges interest. She looked up at me, eyes red, voice trembling. There's something you don't know. I felt my spine straighten. The night he died, she continued, he confronted us, me and the manager. He said he had proof that he'd expose everything. My heart started pounding. He was angry, she said, but calm, too calm. He said he'd give us one last chance to come clean. I remembered the man on the screen, calm, resolved. What happened next? I asked. She hesitated. He left the office late. He said he needed air, and I pressed. The manager followed him, she whispered. The room seemed to tilt. I didn't tell him to, she said quickly. I swear I didn't know until later. Later, I repeated. When the manager called, she said, voice cracking. He said your brother collapsed, that it was stress, that we should let things settle. My fists clenched. You believed him, I said. I wanted to, she replied. Because the alternative meant I'd helped push my husband toward his grave. The words hung heavy between us. She wiped her face. They're going to charge me, I know that now. I won't fight it. I studied her. Why tell me this? Because, she said quietly, the manager didn't act alone, and because the children deserve the truth even if they never hear it from me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. This is everything I have, she said. Messages, call logs, backup copies, things I was too afraid to delete. I took it without a word. This doesn't save you, I said. I know, she replied. But maybe it saves them. She stood, straightened her clothes, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she stopped. He loved you, she said softly. Your brother, he said if something ever happened to him, you'd know what to do. After she left, I sat there for a long time. Not angry, not satisfied, just heavy. The next morning, I handed the flash drive to the authorities. The manager's charges expanded. New evidence, new timelines, new pressure. He broke within 48 hours. He admitted to following my brother that night. Admitted to arguing, admitted to pushing him emotionally to sign one last document, but he denied harming him physically. The autopsy was reopened. Results came back quietly. Stress-induced failure triggered by confrontation. No hands, no poison, just pressure. Enough pressure to kill a man who refused to bend. Some deaths aren't clean. Some murders don't use weapons, they use fear. The widow was charged as an accomplice. She didn't resist. The court granted permanent guardianship of the children to my mother and me. When I told them, they didn't understand the words. But they understood the arms that held them tighter than before. That night, I went back to my brother's office one last time. I stood in the editing room where his final truth had waited patiently. "You were right," I whispered. "About everything?" But the story wasn't finished yet, because part 6 isn't about courts or confessions, it's about legacy. About what happens when the last episode finally airs and the world learns that some stories aren't written for ratings. They're written so the dead can finally speak. If you've come this far, stay with me, subscribe. The episode aired on a Tuesday night. No promotion, no trailer, no warning, just a quiet release slipped into the schedule under a generic title like my brother had planned it that way, so the truth wouldn't arrive screaming but walking calmly into people's homes. I sat with my mother in the living room. The children were asleep. The house was dim, peaceful, nothing like the storm about to break. When my brother appeared on screen, my mother covered her mouth. He looked alive, tired but alive. Standing in the same editing room I had stood in weeks earlier. "If you're watching this," he said calmly, "then the story you think you're seeing is not fiction." The episode unfolded slowly, not dramatic, not emotional, precise. He explained how power hides behind routine, how betrayal rarely announces itself, how people you trust most don't attack you, they convince you to stand still while they take everything. Names weren't spoken directly. They didn't need to be. By the end, there was no doubt left. Social media erupted within minutes. Former employees came forward, old partners spoke, people connected dots they'd ignored for years. The comments weren't about drama anymore, they were about responsibility. The production company was shut down by court order the next morning. The real estate assets were redistributed under legal supervision. The manager accepted a plea deal. My brother's wife was sentenced quietly. No press conference, no speeches, just consequences. Weeks later, the house felt different. Lighter, my mother started cooking again. The children laughed without fear. We planted new trees in the garden where my brother used to sit and think. One evening, as the sun dipped low, my mother said softly, "He knew." "Knew what?" I asked. "That you'd finish the story," she replied. I nodded. "He didn't leave me revenge," she smiled sadly. "He left you responsibility." Months passed. The noise faded. The headlines moved on, but something remained. Film schools began studying the episode. Business ethics classes discussed it. People stopped calling it a scandal, they called it a lesson. On the anniversary of his death, I went to the beach alone. The same place my brother once brought me when life felt too loud. I stood there listening to the waves and spoke out loud. "You were right," I said. "Truth doesn't need speed, it needs timing." The wind carried my words away. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel revenge. I felt closure. Because justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like legacy protected. Children saved. Lies exposed without becoming one. And if you've listened to this story until the end, remember this. Some families inherit money. Some inherit power. But some inherit the duty to finish what the brave could only begin. If this story stayed with you, if it made you pause, reflect, or see people differently, don't forget to subscribe. Not for drama, but for stories where silence is broken and the truth finally gets the last word.